Alright, so today's video, we are going to be reacting to this video called Mourning Overwatch, a Final Farewell. So, my understanding of this is a player who's, played a lot of Overwatch over the years. It kind of gives, like, their storyline of Overwatch, where they loved it, where they kind of lost, fell out of love with it. It's always good to get that perspective on things. Where we agree, what we don't agree on, etc. But it's going to be a cool video from what I've heard. Make sure to check out the channel. It's I think it's Maven Bell. If I got your name wrong, I'm so sorry. But Maven Bell, so make sure to check out the video, like it, subscribe, all of that. We'll see how it goes, and it's good to get the perspective on different things about the game, because sometimes, like, I want to make sure I'm getting kind of seeing how multiple areas of the game feels for people, rather than just personally how mine feels for me, because I like to get that different perspective. So, how's the volume levels?
You don't have to do this anymore. Papa told me after
Good so far?
so many years of service, you gave Overwatch everything, and then they pushed you out. Why would you go back to them? What were you still hiding?
Quite the start. I love their cinematics.
Hi, it's me, Maven, and
Hello.
I have been rewriting the script several times because I have a lot to say. But let's get one thing out of the way.
Okay.
Like most opinion pieces on Overwatch, I'll put down my credentials. I have 1,500 hours on this game. I made a lot of fan art before I even played the game.
Heck yeah.
In terms of rank, I was bronze and silver in Overwatch 1, but I don't want that to discredit my thoughts. I played this game for fun.
I think it's a good part to pause there, because sometimes people will be like, oh yeah, they're in bronze and silver, etc. The thing is we all play Overwatch to enjoy the game, have a good time, have fun. So, like, rank will not take into account on, like, how somebody feels about a game, their opinion about a game, etc., right? Like, just like in top 500, in bronze, you're going to have frustrations with the game. You're going to have things that you love. Like, it's an overall game with different ranks, different, ways people consume the game. There's going to be quick play players, arcade players, players who play for 20 minutes a week, players who play for 20 hours a week. It's always good to get those different experiences and understand, like, how people feel about the game, because, there's a lot more than, like, just specifically the rank that, like, you're playing in right now, or how you consume the game. Like, it's an overall player base, so it's good to know.
I never tried to be a pro or anything, and I never liked the culture of only people in Masters and Top 500 can voice an opinion on this game. This is from a casual perspective. I never watched Overwatch League or anything. That didn't matter to me. The characters did. And I want my voice to be heard because I loved this game so much. Let's get started.
I'm ready. And just to make this clear again, totally fine. I'm much more in the every rank plays differently. Everybody's experience of how they play Overwatch is going to play differently. It's not as clear cut as, oh, they need to do this, they need to do that, and the game will be balanced, etc. Because it doesn't really work that way, right? Like, for example, right now we're running into an issue in top 500 where Mauga and Widowmaker are dominant. Like, absolutely dominant. Like, I mean, Mauga is meta, even more so after OWCS, and Widow takes over lobbies, right? But that's not going to be the same issue that might be happening in, let's say, bronze. So it's always good to get different perspectives, because the way that people play Overwatch is going to be different. And that's something over the years that I've learned, and I think my opinion has shifted in that sense, because, like, at first I was like, oh, well, if you just balance from here, everything else would be great. But, like, we're in top 500, we're playing these heroes at, like, a level that's, like, you're hitting the ceiling, right? And a lot of ranks aren't going to be at that ceiling quite yet. So the way that's going to play, how it's going to feel, and how the game could or should be balanced is going to be different, right? So that's why it becomes hard to balance a game like Overwatch consistently, is because what might be a problem in top 500 may not be a problem in every other rank.
First, we'll talk about my story with Overwatch and how that game impacted me.
All right.
I'll try to keep everything as condensed as possible. So
That's fine.
Year is 2016. The only game that I had purchased that year was Life is Strange.
I never played the game. Heard it was good.
I watched so many people play it already. I
Heard it was
only
good.
ever knew video games as cutscenes and cinematics. I didn't understand what the first-person shooter was, but I was really, really drawn to the Overwatch cinematics. Dragons was incredible to watch, and same with the Soldier 76 cinematic. That was really cool to see. However, my best friend at the time of 7 years suddenly passed away. We had talked about Overwatch. I didn't understand what it was, but we were really interested in the characters and stuff like that. So even though I didn't know anything about the gameplay or anything like that, There were memes everywhere. I knew what High Noon was. I knew what Justice Reigns from Above was. I knew about the play of the games through memes. Yeah, I dealt with a lot of life-altering events that year, and pop culture in 2016 was weird. We had Pokemon Go.
We get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I don't even remember that. Pokemon go to the polls?
We had Harambe. Oh my goodness. Sorry, I'm getting off track.
Pokemon Go?
But that
I don't even...
But Overwatch was part of that culture, so I knew what the voice actors were. It was everywhere. There was fan art. There were comics. Yeah, it was still there. It was very engaging. Anyway, cut to 2017. I'm still dealing with the aftermath of everything. I had no friends. I was an extremely lonely person, and so I had made a friend, and he introduced to me Team Fortress 2, which was really great. It was my first-person shooter, and I had to learn how to use a mouse instead of a mouse pad, and learning how to use WASD. That was fun. And then
Well, just to point out, I've never played TF2 outside of like an hour. It's always so interesting because so many players I met in Overwatch who I'm still friends with to this day. Like for example, Seagull. Seagull was TF2, right? It's always interesting because I see so many TF2 players. I never got to experience it, but I always heard good things. It's not like people kind of grew up on TF2 also, so it was one of those games that, you know, it may be somewhat how I feel about like World of Warcraft. You know what I mean? Like how like World of Warcraft is a game that like still I grew up on it, so it became a big part of gaming for me. So I heard a lot of people had that experience with TF2, and then some people Overwatch, right?
And in a desperate attempt at connection, I made a decision that would change my life forever, and that was joining an Overwatch roleplay server. So I joined an Overwatch roleplay server. I did a lot of art, and I wrote for Diva, and eventually I got a laptop that could barely play Overwatch, but boy, did I play some Overwatch. I was a Diva main, and I remember when the cinematic came.
I just want to point out, I'm so glad that Diva was the hero that was found here, but at this point, because it's 2018, like, I'm glad that the version that they're able to play Diva on worked out, because if this was, like, 2016 Diva, as everybody has seen with Overwatch Classic right now, is by far the worst version of Diva, actually, I think a worse version of any hero I've ever seen.
Came out, I was sitting on my bed that morning just super excited. Then as I played, through a friend of a friend in a group during a game, I met this mysterious Genji main. I'll call him Quincy, and he joined our group, and he was so cool. He always got play of the game and was a really skilled gamer.
Heck yeah.
And one day, while I was just in a private lobby shooting at Ana bots as Widowmaker because I wanted to play her a lot, he joined, and he offered to help, and
Heck
so
yeah, that's awesome.
Widowmaker Academy. And
if I'm correct, this is probably around the time where there wasn't even like, was there like the current version of the arcade now where you could create stuff at this point? Because like this is like next level.
And we would do all kinds of timing of how long it would take me to shoot things. This was before there were Overwatch workshops.
I guess that answers the question.
So we kind of had to do stuff by ourselves. But soon, our Widowmaker Academy sessions just started turning into just hanging out sessions on private lobbies on random maps, and we would just talk for hours. He started introducing me to other video games like A Hat in Time and Borderlands 2, but that is a whole different story. But long story short, we realized we liked each other, and years later, we're now married.
Hey!
I still have a lot of really good friends from those days that.
So now I need to pause for a second, because now I feel a lot better, okay? So we just to kind of summarize this, they end up having this friend who ghosts them, right? Who ghosts them. And you're like, what the heck? Like, you know, this friend ghosted me. But now you go from the friend ghosted them to years later, because of that friend ghosting them and wanting to find, you know, Overwatch and play Overwatch, now is married. That ends up being a W.
I'm still good friends with. And even when I moved in with him, the roommates that we had, I also met through Overwatch. And the thing about Overwatch that was so great was that there was kind of a character for everybody to identify with in some shape or form.
I agree.
That, to me, was the beauty of Overwatch.
I'm so scared. Far out.
However, I seem to have joined Overwatch during the last year of Overwatch being perceived as decent. I think the last good content we've received was the Ash and the Reunion cinematic. Because when 2019 came around, we didn't know, but certain things we found.
Oh, also ended up making a bunch of really, really like good friends. So that I love how the chain effect of that one friend who ghosted turned into getting married and then having a bunch of friends they're friends with till this day.
Is odd turned out to be the cracks forming. For me, I think it started with the Storm Rising event. You see, just before I played Overwatch, I knew very well about the Retribution event. It was huge. You had memorable banter. I still quote to this day.
No problem. We're used to waiting around and getting shot at.
You had cool looks like Genji's Blackwatch skin. Of course, seeing the Commander Reyes skin, where you could see who Reaper used to be.
Yep.
That was awesome. I remember thinking, wow, I can't wait to see what the new skins we get this year. And so the Storm Rising event began, and everyone is in their default skins? Okay, how about the enemies? What kind of enemies are we fighting this time? More talent grunts. No! What's the mission? What are we doing? A really slow payload. Okay, so what's the story like? How's it gonna end?
What might
Man,
you
what
be
are the-
in the market
What an intense PvE mission that was.
for?
An introduction.
Ah, and who is it you would like to meet?
That can change.
You have my attention.
And that was it. And it was kind of underwhelming. And the next thing, as far as we knew, is that we probably wouldn't have gotten a follow-up until like the next year. Since things came up at such a slow pace, why should we have even cared about the story? So if you liked the story of Overwatch, have fun being drip-fed lore. However, in the meantime, while you were waiting for Zen to finally get some spotlight, the game itself was dealing with another huge issue. Brigitte. Good lord. Now, I had joined right after Brigitte was new to the game, so I didn't know what the game was like without her. But she was so overpowered and unkillable. I remember playing her.
And the worst part is, let's just kind of circle back here to Brig, because I think, like, here was the problem. We were in a much different time balance-wise of Overwatch. This was a time where Blizzard's balance philosophy, it's always funny when balance is brought up. The truth is their philosophy was, yeah, we don't care if this hero's strong, you'll figure it out. Like, that was their philosophy for a long time. It was very much like, yeah, we don't really care. This ended up becoming where, like, they had to force roll queue, they had to do all this stuff because, even though I keep in mind, by the way, with roll queue, I like roll queue. I think it ended up being good for the game, but the point I'm making here is Brig was overpowered for a very long time. It was never... they never really wanted to look into like what the main problem was. It was more like, whatever, the players will figure it out. And then Brig ended up being a mainstay. So it was a very interesting time because it was initially you kind of gave a little bit of wiggle room, right? And what I mean by a little bit of wiggle room is initially you'd be like, okay, you know, I get why you haven't done these changes, etc. But Brig was the first time where we're like, hey, listen, like as players, it's hurting a little bit of the overall player base because players aren't able to play their roles now because we have a trickle-down effect. The trickle-down effect was, we talk about meta all the time in Overwatch where there'll be meta. So for example, right now, the meta in Overwatch is like Mauga, whatever the DPS is. The problem is that you're not going to see that in most ranks. Not the problem, like you won't see that in most ranks. The longer a meta exists, the more it trickles down into other ranks. And the problem was that when GOATS took over with Brig, it trickled down to like silver. Like it wasn't even just like, oh, it's happening in top 500. It was happening in like silver and gold. And when a meta reaches silver and gold to the point where not only are players picking the heroes, but knowing exactly why they're picking the heroes, it becomes a little bit ridiculous. So this was the first time in Overwatch where you really got stuck. Like you were not able to swap off this comp. And if you did, it was going to be a battle not only between going up against their better comp, but also like battling your teammates to get to that comp. Like you had to battle your teammates to be able to get to a certain comp. Otherwise, you more than likely were going to lose because of it.
and I thought I was good at her. And I think she was the beginning of the end of Overwatch being more casual. And along with that, because of Brigitte's ability came the infamous GOATS meta, known for its composition of 3 tanks and 3 supports.
I'm gonna rewind it just a second because I was doing something.
Good lord. Now, I had joined right after Brigitte was new to the game, so I didn't know what the game was like without her. But she was so overpowered and unkillable. I remember playing her, and I thought I was good at her. And I think she was the beginning of the end of Overwatch being more casual. And along with that, because of Brigitte's ability came the infamous GOATS meta, known for its composition of 3 tanks and 3 supports.
The Outlaws are going to pull out Dante's Tracer. This has been some of the things that Outlaws fans have been waiting for, is a good Tracer player on Houston. It's Jake on the bar. This combo's worked well for them before, but as soon as
back to spawn. Yep.
They will just
Yeah. Yep.
Now, on the quick play and arcade
That was the correct
side,
play.
It wasn't that prominent because there were no stakes, but boy, did we feel the effects through the nerfs, because instead of just straight up nerfing Brigitte, who was a problem for almost 2 years, they nerfed everything else around her to, I guess, avoid a rework or something. Shields and armor were changed.
Yep.
Game damage was changed. D.Va's defense matrix shrunk. And there was a time in competitive where they also tried experimenting with hero bans.
Yeah, but players ended up figuring out that people ended up figuring this out, by the way. They were just doing hero bans based off of, like, hero selection or something, so people started to just, like, agree to play a bunch of heroes in top 500, and then those heroes would get banned the next week.
There were buffs and nerfs left and right, all to adjust around this composition. And the thing that I'm sour about is that just on the casual end, this wasn't really happening. People were just playing for fun. And so because of all of this stuff happening...
GOATS was good because of the AoE sustain. It was the idea that you could AoE heal, and keep tanks alive. People's number one complaint was the tanks. Right? People were like, oh, the tanks are causing an issue. Like, you need to nerf tanks. So Blizzard's idea here was, okay, let's give Soldier more damage. Let's buff Reaper. Let's buff a bunch of heroes to help do damage to tanks. We're like, no, that's not the problem. The problem is the AoE sustain is so good that once you get rolling after the first 30 seconds, there's a bunch of ults. And, like, supports are really strong. Right? Supports are really, really good. And they're like, okay, nerf tanks. We're like, no, the reason why this comp is strong isn't necessarily because of the tank stack, and it's because of the AoE sustain that is involved in this comp. That's why it's so good. And they're like, okay, let's nerf tanks. We're like, no, let's not nerf tanks. It needs to be, the supports are going to be the problem, because the supports have AoE sustain that are keeping people alive. I don't know how you fix that, but this is where the problem is. Okay, you're right, let's nerf D.Va. And the problem was that they never really wanted them to change stuff. Their idea was that the players would figure it out, and then that would work out.
We got roll queue. For me, this was kind of when the game stopped being fun, because you had to play your role, and the games became more predictable, and, you know, if you wanted to swap to someone maybe you were more familiar with and compromise with your team, it couldn't really happen. If you were a support main and a tank main like me, and you wanted to try DPS to get better, you had to wait a really long queue time.
Hannah, thanks for the 38 months of the freakish bundle. Thank you,
in
appreciate
that game, it felt pretty bad. So this was kind of when I stopped playing with my friends, and I just soloed in arcade. Now, at the time, quick play was still an option, but it was in the arcade menu. And eventually, a while later, they even made a competitive open queue, and then made an open queue in quick play, which I give them credit for eventually. And honestly now, I kind of regret not playing with my friends while we were still playing Overwatch, but at the same time, things just started to feel really bad. And this is going to be a bit of a rant, And
Okay.
I've never heard anyone discuss this. Maybe it's just a me thing. Let me
That's
know.
okay. I'm listening.
But I want to get this particular thing off my chest. What bugs me so much about these changes is that it's to compensate for the highest ranked players. And they're the ones that have the perfect game sense, that have the perfect aim, they know how to play the game most efficiently.
Nice
Not
shots.
me. I have so many hours on Widow and I still miss a lot. And this is just a tangent, but there's something I just sincerely want to address. Because the only content creators that have been around for years are the high-ranking players. But the thing is that this is a natural result of being in a game where the content and the story for the characters hardly ever come out. And this is all that there's left. Which there is nothing wrong with wanting to play competitive at all. It's just that over the past few years, that's all that there's been left to do. I remember there was this video that I've watched so many times called Super Low Tier Overwatch, where
I do want to pause for a second. One thing I'll say is that this is something that I've definitely shifted my opinion on over the years, where like the top down isn't quite as effective as it's not. And I actually talked about it at the beginning of the video, where we kind of talked about where I don't even think they were really balancing the game for anybody at a certain point in Overwatch 1. There was just nothing happening. I mean, what really happened is that they just were like, yeah, we're on to Overwatch 2 now. Like, there was rumors at the time that they didn't even want to like do any more updates and do things like that, right? Like, think about when Echo was released. Echo came out of nowhere. Like, oh, we have a hero here that we just realized we probably need to get to you now because we're about to have pretty much 2 years of development where you're not going to be able to get any updates. So here's Echo. Have fun.
these people have no idea how to play the game, and I love it. These people are having more fun than I will ever have. I just wish that when I was the most into Overwatch, there was more representation for more players like this. I like messing around and having fun, and that's what games are supposed to be. Having fun. Then things got really weird. We had the famous controversy where the professional Hearthstone player Blitzchung was reprimanded by Blizzard for supporting...
I've seen the Castle Run! Oh my god, the Castle Run! Amazing!
I don't know if chat understands the editing here, but it kind of make, you know...
Shit, they did it! They did it!
Wow, check out this cinematic! This looks amazing! Genji has a new look and everyone's back together! This is awesome!
I love this cinematic.
Does this mean Overwatch is back?
Oh, don't even...
Yes. Yes, we are.
However, there's just one thing that I know that everyone was thinking. A sequel? Already? It's only been 3 years. Why are they acting like it's been 8? And
it's been 8 now.
Overwatch 2 skill trees and abilities.
Oh, stop!
Maps,
no, too soon.
And if you're already watching this, you already know.
A lot of you have questions. Like, why a sequel? Or what does that mean to me as a player of the original game? You know, sequels make us nervous more than anything else. So what we're hoping to do with Overwatch 2 is really redefine what a sequel means.
Good movie.
3 years.
Good movie.
3 years. We had a content drought for 3 years.
Uh-huh.
We were patient. We were understanding. And it seemed like they were working on this for a much longer time, too. 2020 was one heck of a year. Give them a pass for that. We saw the deathmatch maps. We saw the lawsuit. We all had bad games. And we're like, okay, you know what? I can hold on until Overwatch 2. I can hang in there. Because I know that they're going to deliver on what they promised. They have to. They promised. And I can't wait to play with new abilities.
This is too soon.
Or play with old abilities. I actually never was able to play with Mass Res. That could be fun.
You can now?
Wait for Zen to get lore.
Still waiting?
3 years of patience and understanding from the player base. And faith as well. Jeff Kaplan, the game director, and
I played 30 games of Ranked every day. I was ready for launch.
Michael Chu, the story director, left. Within those 3 years, by the way. Let me take a little detour because I want to give you context from my perspective.
Okay.
Okay, so here's a little bit of a detour. In early 2022, I was having a massive problem getting out of Overwatch, so I tried to keep it uninstalled for a month, and I was sitting there trying to get my multiplayer shooter fixed, and I was sat there thinking, there has to be something else I could play, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna try Apex Legends. So I played Apex Legends before I played Titanfall 2.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Plot Coalition, I've learned the errors of my ways, which terrified me because I was uneasy about the Battle Royale genre. I had a great time, and I got my friends to play it as well.
That's awesome.
And I'm sure you can guess who I mained.
No way.
Exactly. Yes! I was wondering if there was going to be a Nessie here.
Yeah, Super 5's a good game. I agree.
Oh my god! I was wondering if they were going to do that. That means Watson's been here. What has she been up to?
I'm currently at the top of my game.
Am I okay?
Anyway, gameplay between Apex and Overwatch are completely different, but I'm not here to talk about that. The one thing that I wanted to talk about was this. So I'm watching videos, catching up on Apex lore, and there was this moment that I took note. Loba had a crush on Bangalore or something, and she overheard Bangalore talk about how she and Loba were just friends, and that's all she ever saw. And Loba got heartbroken, and she went away. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then later, some story stuff was coming out for that season, you know, where people like voice act, and there's an illustration behind it. And this moment happened.
Here it is. In the hospital on Olympus, I heard you say you and I were just friends. But you were wrong. We were never just friends. And we never will be.
Wait, you were eavesdropping on me?
I was coming to see you to... Farewell, Sergeant Williams. Out of my way.
And let me tell you...
So... I'm gonna assume that this is basically going on the idea that they connected lore together, and you understood why these characters didn't like each other, like why in game they don't like each other. And sometimes that gets lost in Overwatch nowadays as to like why these characters don't like each other, or like there's so much disconnected lore. There's probably so much story they can involve and get you like attached to the idea of like why this character's awesome, why you should hate this character, love this character, why you're the villain, why you're like not the villain, etc. But I think I wouldn't doubt that that's where this discussion's going, because like that's what that is. Like you understand now that Loba was really angry about this, and then became more like just angry because of all this, and turned Loba into wherever Loba ends up in the story. So
my opinion on Overwatch changed from disappointment to straight up anger and frustration. But why? Why was this important? I'll tell you why. It's because they followed up on something that happened in the story earlier. They completed an arc. No big hints into something major and vague to come. No cliffhangers. They actually followed on something. Something got finished. Now, Apex certainly has its problems. I don't play it anymore because of those problems. But at least Apex can...
What? I'm looking forward to when Overwatch adds we have a battle pass within a battle pass, mid-season battle pass. Oh, you don't want that? Okay, we're not going to do it. Let's do it. You know, I'm still waiting for that one. All right, I'm getting excited. I can't wait. You know, you don't like the battle pass within a battle pass? Come on. Once again, I know every game has their monetization issues with things. I'm just more memeing that. Okay, just before anybody gets like, what do you mean?
can follow up on things that happened a while ago and have arcs. And also, I'm gonna be really petty, but at least Apex Legends wear their queer characters and queer relationships on their sleeves proudly between playable characters, rather than having hints on Tracer's girlfriend or other characters' identities being held outside of the game, similar to how J.K. Rowling did Dumbledore, where the queerness was not in the text, but more of an afterthought. At least in Apex, you see characters flirting with each other, or having a story where people kiss. Anyway, so imagine how
And just to pause, story is very important for games, right? And that's why people get so disappointed that Overwatch won't continue on these stories, right? Like where Overwatch doesn't continue on their stories. Like it just like there's no like there's so much more. Like even like the Tracer reference, it's like that's been known in Overwatch for years. It's like, is that going to be a playable character? Is there more to this story? What happened? Why is people want to know that stuff. Like completing a story is huge.
Felt when the Overwatch 2 beta was announced, right after I finally migrated away from Overwatch.
I mean, to what you're saying, man, I don't think it's even like a problem with like any of that. It's more along the lines of like just continuing a story, right? The idea is like continue a story and don't just leave it as like open-ended but never finish it, right? People like a continuation to a story, and that's what you want. Not everybody is interested in lore, and that's fine. Listen, coming from somebody who's not super lore heavy in the games, I mean, I'm a World of Warcraft player who knows like nothing about the lore. To give you an idea, and World of Warcraft has some of the deepest lore. It doesn't mean I don't think a story should be completed, regardless of how I feel about lore. Like imagine like you have like your favorite movie, but then like your favorite movie just doesn't complete the story. Like you watch the movie, and then halfway through it's like, now we're good. And then that's more along the lines of what it is. It's kind of like, I can't even think of an example. Star Wars, right? And like you're halfway through A New Hope, and they're like, that's it, now we're good. And then you're like, oh sweet, I don't know why it randomly abruptly ended there mid-sentence, but okay, like I get it, that's fine. When's the second one out? Now we're working on our next sequel, Indiana. Indiana what? Just Indiana. Yeah, we're not gonna have a last name for him for to end it 45 minutes in. Is it Indiana, likely from Arizona? He says, nah, you'd say that's a bad example because the movie is all story. This is a gameplay first, then the story. This isn't really about whether it's a video game or not. It's that if you're going to do a story, complete the story. This is the discussion we're having. You could have no story, and that's fine. But if you're going to do a story, people want to see the completion to it at times. Right? That's all it is, right? Like, what happens at the end of, the Zenyatta, like, remember the thing we had for the PvE? Like, when they did the random PvE, and then 6 months later, so they're not doing it anymore? But, like, what happens after that? Right? What's next?
I didn't care. I was already starting to feel really bitter at it. And then we learned that Overwatch 1 was going to be gone for good, so before the game ended, I played what was the last of it before Overwatch 2, where the format changed from 6v6 to 5v5.
Okay. We're on to the next part here. I'm listening.
So, Overwatch 2 launched, and as soon as I opened the game, I felt uneasy. I remember my first game in Overwatch 2, and I saw the missing player in the roster, and my first impression was that it was lonelier. As soon as I saw the shop, it was instantly greedy and scummy, and unlike other battle passes, you couldn't even earn your currency back. So if you completed it, it meant that you had to buy the next battle pass every season, especially if you wanted to get the new heroes in the future. What an absolute stupid decision. So I didn't buy the battle pass, I just shrugged it off because I was hoping it would help with the future PvE, they gotta make money somehow. And damn, if you don't care about battle passes, your rewards for the game are just nothing. Except like the little free battle pass stuff like charms and banners. Ooh, so cool. It was pretty clear instantly to me what this game had turned into, and I didn't like it. And I remember a few days after launch,
I will say, and once again, they probably had their reasons, but I think launch Overwatch 2, one of the major problems they had was it was so bare bones. And that was the problem. I would have loved, and even though at the time I would have hated it, but I would have loved if they just gave themselves a little bit more time to like implement the things they wanted to do at the beginning rather than just make it very bare bones. It felt very, very bare bones. Like there wasn't even a progression system. It's gotten, you said it still is kind of, it's gotten better at like a lot of stuff. Like there's definitely things they've increased on. I think the one thing that I would love to know about one day, and obviously, we don't know if we ever will, but there's a lot of discussion about the getting something back in the battle pass. If I'm correct, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, didn't they, like, at the time, hire the person who did the Fortnite Battle Pass? And more than likely, they had the data of how that does from a monetization point of view on, like, what the Battle Pass is, like, to the next one. I know they just changed stuff with Fortnite, too, so I'm just curious if, like, there was a how that discussion went when they had somebody with the experience of the Fortnite Battle Pass, which was one of the first Battle Passes to introduce you'll get your stuff back. I wonder if they like had that and the person's like, nah, don't do it. And they ended up doing it that way. I think it was Fortnite. I can't remember. I can't remember who it was, but I think it was Fortnite. I think they got the person who, the Fortnite person came over to Blizzard at that time or something, and they had worked on the previous Battle Pass that was in Fortnite that gave people stuff back, so they probably had all this data that was different. But yeah, I agree. The hero thing never should have been in there. And that was a concern that a lot of us had initially, too, was like, yes, you can unlock the hero, but like there comes a certain point where I don't think heroes should ever be in a Battle Pass, and I'm glad that Marvel Rivals isn't doing that. Everybody, has different ways they make monetization, does all that stuff, but I definitely feel like, the hero, I'm glad they got rid of it, is what I'm saying. I'm glad they got rid of it. I mean, I'm glad the team had the to look at that and go, yeah, we don't want to do this. And I'm glad they got rid of that. You said Fortnite still makes a ridiculous amount of money, though? Well, Fortnite makes a ridiculous amount of money because of their collabs, more than likely. And obviously, they just have a huge player base, so.
I just started watching old AwCrap compilations, and I remember, like, crying because the game that I had loved so much just died overnight. And I was like, okay, I'll just uninstall and wait for the PvE and move on with my life.
Some special guests, it's game director Aaron Keller and executive producer Jared Noose joining me here on Dev Chat. How are you guys doing?
Hello.
Hey, Matt, doing great. Thank you so much for having us today.
Wonderful. Thank you for having us on the show.
We announced Overwatch 2 in 2019. We began to pull more and more of our focus and energy away from the live game and all of the people that were playing it. Now we made a commitment to always prioritize the live game and all of the people playing it, and to devote our development efforts there.
At the same time, development on the PvE experience really hasn't made the progress that we would have hoped. And so we're left with another difficult choice. Do we continue to pour all that effort into PvE, hoping that we can land it at some point in the future? Or do we stick with this set of values we've aligned on and focus on the live game? With everything we've learned about what it takes to operate this game at the level that you deserve, it's clear that we can't deliver on that original vision for PvE that was shown in 2019. What that means is that we won't be delivering that dedicated hero mode with talent trees, that long-term power progression. Those things just aren't in our plans anymore.
I remember when I heard that news. I remember the overall feeling was shock, but not surprise. The thing is that there was this consensus, considering Blizzard's recent history, that the PvE wouldn't be good, but the fact that they couldn't provide the bare fucking minimum
Pause in a second.
said a lot. So now
I feel like what ended up happening is previous team in Overwatch 2 decides to stop making content for the current game to make Overwatch 2 because their initial vision was that they wanted it to be a game like Titan, which Titan was going to be like this MMO PvE style game that also had PvP. Titan became Overwatch. They wanted Overwatch did really well. They said, okay, now we have a game here. We can get resources. Let's go do this. They went to go make the game. Then that team started to like trickle away. A lot of people left. And then the new team is sitting here left with, oh, we also have to take the vision they had previously and then make another vision out of it. Like we need to go and take their vision and then make that game. And eventually they hit a roadblock where they're like, we don't have most of the original team here. We don't even know what we want to do yet because like we are just like out of nowhere. We're now taking care of this game. And they had to make a very difficult decision to do that. Now, keep in mind, I was huge on the PvE side, right? Like I love PvE just as much as I love PvP. Especially playing MMOs like World of Warcraft, where like PvP and PvE is a big part of it. At some point, you know, as they lost a lot of people in the company that were probably working on the previous version, they were just left in a spot where they were like, we need to make a decision. And they obviously had to make a very difficult one when it came to that side. And I still would have loved to see the PvE to this day. I think it would have been great. But they wouldn't be in that situation if they didn't get rid of people. I think sometimes, and once again, I think sometimes that can be out of their control. And what I mean by that is it goes a lot further than the team itself. And I think that's the problem. Like if somebody like at the higher up of a company comes in and goes to like team 4 and is like, yeah, we need to get rid of this amount of people. And they go, well, can we keep them? Like, no. They get stuck there. And it sucks because you hate to see that. I would have loved if they kept the lore team and kept building something off of that for sure.
Now we would just get some of the campaign without any polish, just like an archives event. But you had to pay for it. No thanks. This isn't what we were promised. We went through ridiculous changes, and this is all we got? Are you serious, Blizzard? Though my favorite part...
Yeah, but that's under... Just to make it clear, I thought we were talking about, like, current time Kiskaloo. I did hear about that, yeah, where, like, they were offered previous people for more on the team. This was, like, back in, like, 2019 or something, right? If I'm correct. I was more referencing the recent, like, team. Like, the team that, like, isn't that previous team that was offered all that opportunity.
Was that Blizzard was kind enough to give us a consolation gift by putting Overwatch on Steam. And finally, the player base could air out their grievances.
Download the game, write a bad review, uninstall the game. No PvE? Until they bring back 6v6, do not install this game. Blizzard only cares about your wallet. It's an indie company, guys. Give them a break. Remembering when the game actually used to be good feels weird. I know Overwatch 2 gets a lot of hate, but personally I don't think it gets enough.
And that's the only good decision Blizzard has ever done since the launch of Overwatch 2. It was so validating and cathartic to see everyone have an actual chance to express how they felt about the state of the game. Like, it wasn't just me. And now let me completely list out all the things we lost for the sake of a glorified shop update. The first thing that
Before I go to the next part here, too, to go back to one thing I do want to say is I lost my train of thought here, so give me a second. We were talking about Steam. It wouldn't have been as bad as it was if they also didn't lose the... Now keep in mind, once again, all of that stuff was extremely like valid on like, you know, the complaints, like the PvE stuff especially. Around the same time that they released the game on Steam, Overwatch was removed from China. And a lot of that was because there was a battle between the previous leadership of the company and in China, where they were like, hey, we want more money for you to play Overwatch or to be able to play our Blizzard games. And they're like, no. And they're like, okay, we're going to take the game away from you if you don't agree to our deals. And they go, okay. That was it. They just said, okay. They're like, okay. So then they called their bluff. So that's why there was no Blizzard games in China for a long time. Actually, I don't even think Overwatch is back there yet. Should be back soon from what I'm understanding. I think World of Warcraft is back there now under the new leadership because they came to a deal finally. But what happened was a lot of players who loved Overwatch in China were like had nowhere to like express the frustration. The game released on Steam and they were like, oh, okay, here we go. So that everybody who loved Overwatch in China went on Steam and basically just sat there and said like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why would you take this game away from us? We love this game. So it ended up being, not only was it the PvE complaints, it ended up being like a whole country couldn't play Overwatch because they just took it away because of all that. So it ended up being a really bad timing that they did it. And it ended up making this whole, like, whirlwind of what you see in Overwatch.
I personally thought was absolutely appalling was that the Overwatch category on Twitch disappeared, meaning that all of the clips on Twitch of players playing Overwatch 1 are gone. A lot of the game's history with so many players are completely wiped out.
Tier 3, thanks to the 35 months with the Tier 1.
Thank you. How much of a downgrade we were going to be getting. 5v5 is so empty.
I don't think people wanted to, like, I don't think they just, like, got rid of the section. I think it was a technical side thing. Because I remember during that time, there was the Overwatch 1 section and the Overwatch 2 section. It just became down to a technicality with something. Like, they just needed to, like, merge things. I don't think it was like we must delete all Overwatch 1 clips and hide that it's Overwatch 2 now.
And the effects are much more flashier. And honestly, I have a personal conspiracy theory that the effects are way too much to hide how empty a 10-player lobby is compared to a 12-player lobby. Hi, editing Maven here, making this video longer to go on a huge tangent.
I gotta pause for a second. I felt like 6v6 was way more than that when it came to, like, the overall effects. That seemed like... I looked at that and I'm like, damn, that looked normal to me. Maybe I'm just so used to Overwatch 2 now. I don't think they increased effects to get rid of the emptiness of... To go like, oh, it's empty, we need to increase the effects. I think they just finally were able to update their engine, which is what they talked about, and then they were able to do more things with their... I don't know. I don't think that was an issue.
The thing is about Overwatch, it has always been effects heavy, but not this heavy. The biggest issue, I think, the frames on the border that are supposed to highlight your conditions whenever you're being healed, impacted, or any other kind of effect. Like, I'm freezing these particular frames. How is the average player supposed to navigate this? I don't think anyone was asking, yeah, I really want to be blinded whenever I'm attacked. Good thing I have this blinding animation to help me out in this critical time, to help me make the best decision I can in a very short amount of time. Now, before you analyze the gameplay to see what I could have done to avoid this situation, that's not really the point I'm trying to make.
I'm not going to.
Not only are these effects on the borders taking a large percentage of the screen, but they're also flashing, and I can't recognize my positioning choices or how I died if I can't see what's going on. And this is me playing the character that requires no aiming, is very forgiving on positioning, and has a self-heal. I can't imagine trying to play a hit-scan character with this. So I'm going to be on the right side of history, and I'm going to say that 6v6 is a lot better than 5v5. Fights in 5v5 are so short. If 2 people die in the fight, it's almost instantly over. And I've never seen such a freaking amount of team kills now in a game before. Not to mention the spawn camping, because you don't have a second tank. I stopped playing tank because having a second tank helped me cut some slack because I'm not the best player in the world. These maps aren't made for 6v6 in mind. Like, I know assault maps have their own problems, but playing it in the current 5v5 mode in arcade, you can see the problems with the format more prominently.
Okay, I gotta stop for a second. There's a reason why they got rid of 2CP. 2CP sucked. Like, I'm gonna be real with y'all. Like, 2CP just sucked. So I guess I don't get the direct correlation here of being like, oh, 2CP is worse because it went 5v5. It's like, 2CP kind of sucks.
And honestly, maybe that's why push feels like ass. I hate push so much.
Dude, it's the delivery, I'm telling you. That's such good delivery. That's why I laugh. It's just so good. I don't mind push either, but we'll see where this goes.
Feel better if it was in 6v6. Hi, editing Maven here. One thing I wanted to add in the 6v6 versus 5v5 is that basically you have to play your role and you have to play the objective, because there's no room for wandering around or experimenting, and sometimes that's where the fun was. And there's only a certain way you can play this game, though this isn't new. I feel like the restriction Overwatch has been putting on their player base came from role queue, and they made 5v5 to try fix queue times, and wow, how did that turn out, Blizzard? Now you have to play your role even harder, and if you want to do anything else, you're throwing. Over the years, the player freedom has been taken away, and I think role queue in hindsight was kind of the nail in the coffin, because it was a band-aid fix for the GOATS meta, which was caused by refusing to nerf Brigitte for years, and then we got the double.
Okay. I mean, it's good discussion points. I will say, I'm in the opposite mindset of where I feel like the game's more open now to go and do more things. Like, I think, like, yes, it's more punishing if they kill you, but you have more opportunity to go around the map, is how I feel. In 6v6, you had to play more, like, together. In 5v5, you can play more deathmatchy. So it technically actually leans more into that, like, you can run around the map and do whatever, than even 6v6 did. But, yeah, I just wanted to point that part out.
Shield meta, and I guess 5v5 was a response to that, and look where we are now. I am so happy. Overwatch notoriously, they just make more problems by trying to fix problems they make rather than completely reverting it, because the balance team has like an ego issue. The card system and the medal system.
What's the ego issue? The only reason why I stopped there for a second is I feel like that's describing what the first team would have been like with their balance, rather than the second team. Because I feel like the Overwatch balance now is less about that ego. And what I mean by that is, we go, what do you mean less about the ego? They just buffed Orisa for the 26th time. Yeah, they've also nerfed Orisa for 26 times, which doesn't scream ego to me. It screams they're trying to figure out how to make the hero relevant in all ranks, right? If it was ego, they'd be like, nah, Orisa, we're buffing Orisa, we're keeping Orisa that way. That's it. Good luck to you. So I don't think it's an ego thing with the current balance team, because I've seen them buff and revert so many changes now that if it was about ego, they would never change that stuff. Like, Ramattra would still be doing damage to shields right now.
loved medals. Honestly, it was a great way to focus on your own performance, and you could see your objective time and kills. You could see the parts that mattered. And the same thing happened with the card system, where you were sitting on the payload or defending the point. You could get an acknowledgement for your efforts without doing crazy stuff. Not to mention that the card system was a great time to take a breather after a game, and you could also talk to the enemy teammates in match chat. And it was a great way to just cool down and discuss maybe goofy things that happened in the match. It was really nice. Another thing that I miss...
I mean, you can also not queue after the game, too, to take a little bit of a break. But... I get it, though. Postcards make sense. I'm not a... Listen, I've seen both versions of Overwatch now. I've seen guess what your teammate's damage is and talk about your gold medals and see exactly what it is. Both have their issues. Both will cause issues. I prefer the scoreboard over it. I still think there's too many people who look at the scoreboard and don't know where to process the information in the sense of like they just look at damage and go, oh, this person must suck. I think that's the problem. I enjoy at least having the data in front of me rather than I have gold damage. What are you doing, idiots? Cards I can see. I think the excitement of cards, why not? I think that was just a fun thing that they got rid of that they probably shouldn't have gotten rid of. My guess it's not as simple as they thought it sucked. It's probably because exactly what I said. They had to really quickly transition into Overwatch 2. And when they went to Overwatch 2, they couldn't bring a lot of the features, and now they have to rebuild all of the features. I think that's really what it is. And when it came down to it, they had to decide, how do we rebuild? What do we rebuild? And that went to the further back part of the game.
Is the borders. Give me back my gold border. I worked for that. It was pretty. It showed someone's experience in the game. It also helped you spot Smurfs. And also what I miss is the background.
Yeah, I don't care if they have that or not. If people want it, why not? If people don't, I'm okay with it. Maybe have an option. I don't know. I don't mind. I'm okay with that. I don't. When it comes to like cosmetic side of the game and like things that can improve your UI experience, etc. I'm not one going to like shut down the idea that, hey, if you liked seeing the medal around your name bottom left, why take it away? It doesn't matter to me, but I at the same time, why not? Heck yeah, have fun with it, right?
And of the main menu being one of the maps, and it would be randomized, and you could look at skins and you could see them how they interact with the environment rather than just this boring training room. I'm not a big fan of the new hero select animation. Some of them are a little too flashy, especially if you're trying to choose a skin before the game starts. And I think that they are a little over animated, and I like the simple animations. They had a certain charm to it.
My feelings on cosmetics and things like this are I don't even notice the differences too much in this. So it's really hard for me to be able to give you like, oh yeah, I can see what you're talking about. I don't mind the animations for heroes, but how often do you see me, for example, an example that was provided here was I switch, skins before the game starts and I want to be able to see the skin quicker so I can make that decision. I don't do that, so I can't sit there and say I would, oh, that's dumb, etc. because I don't know, I don't do that. So, I mean, maybe it is a thing that people care about. It's not up my alley of things that I would care about as much. That's where I'm at with that one. So basically what I'm saying is I can't really give a full opinion on it because I can't say that I don't know.
It's overcompensating, and I wish we had the option to have Overwatch 1 animation similar to the Overwatch 1 skins.
That's cool. I like that.
Also, what is up with legendary skins looking like epic skins and epic skins looking like legendary skins? And on that note, I think with some of the recolors, you can already see some of the Microsoft layoffs. Actually, I'm probably wrong because these were probably made like a year or two prior, so give it some time. I'm sure things will definitely get better. I just like the crossover events, and unfortunately, they're the only new animations Overwatch is getting. We have like not KDA, we have Transformers, etc. And now these characters are just pimped out for skins for things that don't matter story-wise. So I know their resources aren't being put into things that matter to me in this game in the first place, and it makes me sad. Characters are now just props to put random skins to sell. But I know that they did it before in the first game with like the Halloween and summer events, but knowing that the main content is to just get in your wallet feels icky, especially after everything. Why would I give this game any more of my money when I know that they won't do anything good with it? Also, this video has been taking so
I'm okay. Like maybe I'm not as passionate about the Overwatch cosmetics, but I feel like I don't see any issues with collabs. as much. Like if they just I don't know, like just a way to have people have a good time in game. Maybe I'm just not as passionate about it, I guess. Like I've enjoyed a lot of the collabs. Like I understand wanting the lore. I get that. Hey, listen, I think Overwatch is certainly lacking in the lore department nowadays. I think that I would love to see more ways, but I don't think this is like, I think the collab skins are pretty cool.
So long to do, but apparently there is going to be some testing for 6v6 in the future or something. I'm not holding out much hope. I could be wrong, but from the weird wording about it, I'm skeptical because they have a very bad history of reverting changes completely. And I'm worried that if they experiment,
Sunny, thanks for the 9 months with the tier 1.
In some way,
Ooh,
they'll see something
9
wrong
months.
and they'll say
That's
it's our
almost
fault,
8
like
months.
LFG.
Okay, I need to stop for a second because I'm starting to lose track of the video. First of all, this has been a great video so far. Like from the editing to like the discussion to like the really cool stories. Like what I'm starting to lose track of here is I don't understand the segue there of this team is going to sabotage 6v6 and blame us just like looking for group. Huh? What was blamed about looking for group? That what, people didn't queue up for it or use it as much? Here is my take. I do not think they will sabotage the 6v6. They will put full effort into seeing if they can make it work because they're in a mindset now, especially at Blizzard, where Blizzard has a lot of experience now, seeing that classic versions or different versions of games are fine because if the players are playing, they're playing the game. And then they're probably consuming the content in the ways that they want when it comes to player numbers. I think that there's a world where 6v6 could be added onto the game with 5v5 being there, and they're not going to try to throw that away if it means that they're going to bring back 1 million players daily who would play a version of a game that they want, right? If they even get 10% of their every month player base or get 10% of players to return, it's a win for them. They're okay with that. So they're not going to sabotage it. I don't see that happening. And once again, I understand that in previous things they've done, there's been things where they've promised stuff or wanted stuff and it doesn't come out the way it's supposed to. So I have seen a little bit more consistency with the new team. And you hear me say new team a lot now is because this dev team is so different than even like the dev team 5 years ago. Once again, they still need to showcase that they're going to be able to do these things and do them well for people to kind of get that trust back with how they do stuff. But yeah, I guess I just got confused as to how the point was going into looking for group, which the ads are playing right now. So I'll let that go through and we'll see what the looking for group point is though.
Is that they said not enough people are using it, but it's really hard to know what their standards are number-wise, because I saw people using it, I used it when it was active, so it's hard to guess what's enough for them to keep changes around or revert changes, and that's what keeps me skeptical. I have to say though, I wanted to go back on some of the competitive player versus casual player conversation. Okay. To be honest, I have heard both sides of the player base express that Overwatch has become too competitive. Overwatch has become too casual. The truth is, this game isn't made for anyone. This game is only made for content creators to advertise the cosmetics and play competitive for all eternity. And I'm sure it's an absolutely wonderful time. It's great for their mental health and they're truly living the dream of having their livelihood determined by interest in an empty shell of a game from a company with an increasingly tanking reputation. And as the general public is losing interest, they're also probably losing money. But if they leave, it's a big risk. And also they've gained such good faith with the people of Blizzard that they can't express their true feelings, so they keep playing this game hoping that one day things will get better, but knowing this game's history, that'll probably never happen. This game...
Now, I tell them if something sucks. Chat knows this. Like, I'll have devs in chat, and I'll be like, yeah, I don't like this. Y'all know that. and you bring up the point of like, oh, they don't want to quit the game because they have, you know, the relationships with the devs and this and that. I play Overwatch because I like Overwatch. Right? Now, granted, don't get me wrong. I get more views during this. I definitely benefit from, like, drop events, and I benefit from being where I'm at in Overwatch. But that's not why I play the game. I enjoy the game. I straight up enjoy the game. It's my special interest. So this isn't about like, oh, I just can't leave the game and I would go play other stuff. I'm not really in a spot to really... Listen, I've been streaming for however many years. I've been streaming full time now. I've learned that rather than go and like chase another game or chase what the meta is, etc., I just want to do what's going to make me happy because that's going to make the stream the most entertaining. That's all I really care about when I do things. So this isn't about like, oh, I can't say anything that, first of all, you get in here and say the words top 500 and you'll hear me go on a rant with devs in the chat. I'm not worried about that. And I think at the point now, if like devs got super upset about me being like, oh, this sucks, then I'm like, that would be a problem in itself. Like a lot of devs are like, yeah, no, we can see we can do better in this situation. And if they explain something to me and I go, okay, that makes sense. Like I don't think it's as deep as this was meant to be, where it's just like, oh yeah, like they're just stuck here and the game, they hate everything. It's like, no, I just enjoy streaming it. I like the game. Believe it or not, I like Overwatch.
The game has lost its vision, if it even had one in the first place. Their only incentive now is to just make skins for the price of a better game. And to be honest,
Didn't Helldivers have... never mind. I'm just gonna keep going.
it feels bad because this game has great stuff. Like, we have anticipated Junker Queen, Malga, and Ramatra for years, but like, with the state of this game, with not just its monetization, but its ridiculous balancing, it's not worth reinstalling. And whenever I see videos about the downfall of Overwatch, I've seen the quote-unquote IP being spoken about just briefly, and I feel like the IP isn't talked about enough because that's the important thing to me. It's how I got attached. They have really good stuff, and I want to give it some spotlight to emphasize what could have been what we lost. We have characters like Winston and Reinhardt that are the equivalent of a warm hug whenever you hear their voices. And you have Anna, who's like this badass older woman, and we don't get very many playable older women very often. The potential of Sigma being this Lovecraftian horror protagonist, they've done nothing with that. Like, we have this well-meaning scientist who's being taken advantage of by a shady organization, but can you imagine the potential if they lost control of him? Reaper can be seen as just an edgelord, but imagine if we could have actually seen the transition from Gabriel Reyes to Reaper.
Okay.
Another concept I love.
I'll pause for a second, and I think now that I've watched the video, I think what this is, and I think like it's more about that she just really misses the lore aspect of the game. So if you're a player that's very lore driven in Overwatch, I can see where a player would be really frustrated with that and doesn't want to be able to play the game as much. I can see it. The whole discussion here is like, oh, the lore needs to be better. Like, the lack of lore does not make me want to play Overwatch. I can see that, right? Like, because the lore is, they certainly have just disconnected from that. Like, the lore is long gone from what we were used to. So I can certainly see that for sure. So
Love is May.
I agree this should be a
Isn't
show.
a fighter at all. She's just a scientist. However, she does her best and uses her ingenuity and knowledge to be crafty to help, which is also reflected in May's gameplay. And also, it's really sweet to see her paired up with Winston in the 0 Hour cinematic, who's also in the same boat as her. And at the end of the cinematic, they help defeat the evil Omnic with their problem-solving skills. And the art is just amazing. The Overwatch maps, the skins. My favorite maps are the Halloween themed maps. Like, Halloween has always been exciting year-round because you get the best stuff. Also, we were blessed with the artist Neskane, who did fantastic work on the hero origin stories and sprays. I think he had recently left Blizzard, but his work is immaculate, and honestly, he's my favorite artist of all time.
Heck yeah.
And whenever the characters have been added post Overwatch 2, they don't feel like they belong. Like Kiriko and her weird age compared to Hanzo and Genji, if they were like childhood friends, but she's younger than them. And where's the consistency?
Well, that's because we haven't hit the multiverse arc yet, right? That's going to be in like 2 years, right? Overwatch Multiverse, where they're going to talk about where Kiriko went back in time and this and that or whatever, like, you know. Yeah, honestly, I think that came down to, like, they needed to get lore out in some way, and they were like, okay, let's just go throw a bunch of stuff on there, and they're like, all right, ready? Let's do a random number generator, and let's just see what we get.
See between where magic starts and tech ends. It's like Ilari has been chosen by the sun powers, or Lifeweaver using science and life to heal people. What does that even mean? Oh man, I should have healed everybody using life. Why didn't I think of that? The characters that haven't been established previously, like Malga, Junker Queen, and Ramatra, they already don't feel like they belong. As of recording this, there's a new character that's from Mars and is May's niece?
No.
But I find it kind of telling that I don't think they care about the story at all with how far this scope is going. And then I know we have space travel to the moon, but this lore that expands is just turning into a shallow ocean. I know at this point in the game's history, the story has hardly been...
I gotta pause because the ad started, but yeah, I guess I'm just not as attached to the lore as much, so I can't really... I think we can all agree, for the most part, that the game itself needs the lore to connect in some way. That's fine. I don't mind that problem.
Been touched on, and I don't think that they ever will, and I feel a little stupid for ever investing in the potential this game had. And it becomes apparent the formula of these stories. The world is changing. We need to help because more bad stuff is happening. Now we're all here, and these are just empty campaigns, and it's clear that all of this was for nothing. I keep trying to think about where all of these lies and false promises came from, and I feel like it's always been this way. I feel like we've been tricked into believing that there was going to be more in the future, and look where we are now. I've seen many games make this mistake in believing that they're the only game in the world and that they can afford to coast off its success without putting in any more work. And if any of the player base asks for more or asks for changes that aren't working out, they ignore it and act like the player base doesn't actually know what they want. Anyway, just wait around for this really new thing that's definitely happening. It's gonna be really great. Just stick around a little longer. I feel like I've been duped and punished for once loving this game. The scope of this game is so unfocused and they can't deliver on any of it. And the best way I can describe what Overwatch has been doing for years has been this vine. And sadly, the only thing this game has been doing reliably for years...
I've never seen that one. That was great.
...microtransactions for skins. And I fear that's all it's ever gonna be. What's so funny is that the characters reflect the sentiments I'm feeling. Soldier 76. At first I thought it was funny about how broody he was, but to be honest, I think he was onto something.
You're one of those heroes, aren't you?
Not anymore. A lot of memories of this place. They weren't all bad. Bring back Overwatch. What's the point?
And I think we were all, Winston, wanting to dream of a better vision to bring back Overwatch back to its old potential and more. The cinematics have always had some inspirational moral going on. Don't do things on your own, dare to do the right thing, and the famous...
Okay. Always remember, never accept the world as it appears to be. Dare to see it for what it could be.
Baby
Winston. The
Winston.
fact that this game reflects none of these sentiments, it tries to represent itself as the people of Overwatch should be embarrassed. It's no wonder why so many people left. What happened to Overwatch shouldn't be acceptable.
You already know this. Look, the people decided they were better off without us. They tore our family apart.
The more I see Winston's fight to make things better and the sad reality of Overwatch, my heart breaks for him knowing the truth of all of this. I mourn this game. When Quincy and I talk about Overwatch, we always bring up this image. This topic is so taxing to talk about, let alone make a video about, and I feel like there's still so much more I want to say. Overwatch had something great. It won Game of the Year. It had pop culture, cosplayers, artists by the balls. The voice actors were stars. People were making art and animations.
I'm going to own all these noobs.
Now there's practically nothing about it. All that everyone ever talks about is how dead this game is. Overwatch entered pop culture triumphantly, and now it's just like every other live service game, which can be good, but...
My hot... I don't know if it's a hot take. Overwatch is not dead. Overwatch is not dead. It's one of those games that actually is probably on the rise over the past, 6 months because it's improved. It doesn't mean that a lot of... It's just one of those things that and once again, I don't pay attention too much, so I could be wrong. I think a lot of people just like to talk about how it is. Like, it just becomes like a point of like, I think it becomes the public perception of the game. And I think like it's still on the rise again. It's so hard to, they still need like one or two like major things to the game for it to get back to where like the perception gets better for the game. Like, whether that's, I don't know what that would be. It's probably going to be within the IP itself. So I think it's definitely one of those things where the game is still going to, as long as they keep doing what they're doing, it will improve. It also just depends what people are looking for out of Overwatch, I think, is the next step. Because I think that's something that I still, maybe I need to do a better job of like researching what people want from Overwatch. Because a lot of it does come down to like talking about, they don't like collabs, they don't like the updates as frequently, etc. And it's like, okay, so what are things that people would like with it? And learning about that and can maybe help me understand more.
Deep Rock Galactic and Helldivers are the exception and not the rule. And it's going to take a lot more than testing out 6v6 to bring me back. I'm tired of hanging on for this game that will never deliver, a game that takes away features and returns them in a worse state. Overwatch isn't the only game in the world, and I'm just gonna move on.
That's okay.
And one of the most heartbreaking things about how our good faith for Overwatch has been tainted was that last year my husband and I went to visit his old home, and we needed to clear some things out. And a great friend of ours gifted him a Genji statue. It was beautiful.
That's a cool statue.
We had a whole bunch of Genji merch too. We had a sword.
That's awesome.
And a jacket. And actually, I still use the Diva wallet that I got in 2018.
I think I have that too.
As we were cleaning out, we knew that all this Overwatch stuff was gonna sit there collecting dust, and we didn't want to bring it back with us. So we gave it away to his cousin, who appreciated it. But honestly, what makes me so sad is just the fact that we let go of all of that so easily without any bit of remorse breaks my heart. This is how badly Overwatch has fucked up. That it's like a breakup, honestly, where all the good things that had good memories with it, we see it, and it's like, I don't want to look at this anymore. And you know what? There is nothing like Overwatch. Even with Marvel Rivals going on, I'm sorry, but there's nothing like being Mercy or Diva. They may combine abilities all they want, but I want to play the...
I'll pause. Marvel Rivals, what is that? Rival in DC? Or I can't,
What was great about Overwatch was that there was someone for everybody, and you didn't need to compromise for a group game instead of like, oh, are we playing a survival shooter, or are we playing Minecraft or something?
What?
Did you like Metal Gear Rising? Genji might be a great pick for you. Did you like Evangelion and Gundams? Diva's perfect for that. Every one of my friends had that one character that they identified with, and it was always great to see that character with their favorite skin of choice, and whenever you saw that skin, it's like, hey, that's my friend. I mourn this game. I'm not happy talking about how dead this game is.
One thing I will say is that you can still do all that part. Like the have your favorite skin, or like enjoy a hero from a different game. That part you can still do. Like, regardless of lore, etc., that part you can still do.
Sure, it's fun and cathartic to make fun of it, but at the end of the day, I'm just heartbroken. I don't want more from Overwatch anymore. It's gone, and we're never getting it back. It's been a year since that announcement of PvE, and I think a lot of us are now in just like this hangover phase. No more memeing on it or goofing on it. This is just sad. I've been sad about this game for a long time, and every once in a while there's always a reminder of what we lost. For instance, what made me start making this video in the first place was learning that one of the Overwatch compilation channels, Rapida, stopped uploading a few months prior to me even starting this video, and the fact that I didn't even notice saddened me. And it was just another reminder of the Overwatch-shaped hole that's in my chest, and it's never gonna be filled. And to be honest, it just seems like there's just this general collapse of live service, and I think Overwatch tried jumping on the trend of the free-to-play service games in the last stages of its lifetime. I know that we've passed loot boxes now, and battle passes, and honestly, I'm afraid of what's gonna happen next, because the logical option to make games good and to complete them is too hard of a task for these billion-dollar companies to do. And I'm gonna be forever furious at Blizzard for doing what they did. It's absolutely unacceptable about how they kept leading on their player base for years and abusing their faith. I want to hope for the best, but they're gonna have to do a lot more than bringing back 6v6 for me to forgive them. Overwatch genuinely changed my life. Quincy and I have this Gremlin Diva plush that we got from Etsy, and she's turned from Gremlin Diva to our own character who shares the same name as Hana. We've given her a whole new world and universe, and it's become our own. So a little bit of Overwatch still lives in us. And I will forever be grateful for meeting my husband and the most wonderful group of friends I've ever met through this game. However, it's time for me to move on.
Which, full circle, by the way, to point that out, the friend who ended up ghosting her early on ended up leading to her having an awesome marriage and a bunch of great friends. So that was good to see that kind of come like full circle and where it went to.
This world that they've made will forever be in my heart, and I just want all of these characters with so much potential to move on to something better.
If you're hearing this message, I guess that's it. All I ever wanted was to create a brighter future. But history always has a way of repeating itself. I have put everything that I believe in, everything that I hoped for, into this, my last creation. In the dark days to come, the world will need her. And perhaps, as long as she is there, I won't truly be gone.
All right, I was actually going to make that one the last one and then hop.
No, you weren't, Flats. It was a drop stay. You were going for another 12 hours on max ads. The video was really, really cool. Like, I think what ended up happening there, the vibe I get is that, like, she loved the game. The game was a big part of her life. And she wanted it to be, you know, more of what she really enjoys the lore part of the game. And that part I can understand, right? Like, the lore aspect is just not there anymore in Overwatch right now. Doesn't mean it won't ever come back or that they won't revisit it, but like, it just feels like one of those things right now where, you know, she's just grown past the game. It isn't the game that, you know, that she made, you know, all these amazing friends with and met her husband and did all these really cool things and had a great time. And I can see that, you know, I'm not as attached to the lore as much, but I get it. At the same time, and to each their own with that stuff. I still enjoy Overwatch a lot, and yeah, it's a cool game for me. But I will say, great video. If y'all haven't subbed to her channel, that was really well done. Regardless if you agree with like the opinions or like where, you know, some of the points went, it was still really well done. You can definitely tell it was like a heartfelt video that talked about. It's why I always say it's good to get out of a bubble sometimes to be able to learn the experiences of different things, because you can understand different points of view. And when you do that, it makes things a lot easier for me to understand why a player right now may not want to play Overwatch. Like for me, I go, hey, I love the game. It's getting a lot more fun. and I've enjoyed it. It's gotten better, but at the same time, when somebody's saying, hey, like, this is why I love the game, I go, oh, now it makes sense as to why some people are even more frustrated with the game or have that. So I thought it was a great video. So make sure to like that video. If you like this video, hit the like button. Subscribe to all 3 YouTubes. Leave a comment. All that helps. You want to submit your own video for us to react to, etc. Description below. Also, Cordy's live on stream. The Twitch chat below the webcam. With that being said, I hope you all have an amazing day/night.